Apologies for the strange setup. I've recently moved, so we're doing this in the living room while my bedroom gets set up. Either way, let's go ahead and dive into things. I know that I'm normally known as the guy that does esports content and is focused on that kind of thing, but this time I'm taking a departure to talk about something else that is League of Legends and Riot related, that being lore. Now, this is kind of a fun thing for me to talk about, and I think I'm kind of in a unique situation because a lot of people that are into esports maybe don't care about story and games that they play. They're more interested in like the gameplay itself, and vice versa. Sometimes people that are more interested in story, not as interested in the esports thing. But I actually can tell you that I am very actively interested in both sides of things whenever I play games and can admire both. And this is one of the reasons why I've always been so disappointed with Riot Games, because I think that Riot Games is a great company and that they really nail it on so many different things, right? Business models, esports, design, art. Like these guys have really, really ramped everything up in the past couple of years and really shored up in the areas that they are lacking in almost every area. That except for I think maybe the thing that they've had the most problems with is story and narrative and that kind of thing. And this has gone on for a very, very long time. People that have played League for a long time or have been part of the community for a while will know that there used to be the Journal of Justice, right? And so many people talk about like rest in peace Journal of Justice or somebody bring the Journal of Justice back. But basically that was an in-client thing where there was actually it came out once a week and there was an interesting story or multiple stories. It was like a fake little newspaper that told the stories of different characters in the game interacting with each other and that kind of thing. And that is, so many people are obsessed with that because while it was really simple and crude and oftentimes kind of a joke more than anything else and would just play off of in-game jokes, it was the closest I think we've had in a very long time to having a solid storyline or multiple storylines within the world of Runeterra. And I think that that is so disappointing. I remember being back in 2013. It's almost like the replays thing, right? Where it's like it's always on the horizon. There's always going to be lore on the horizon. They're going to fix it and that kind of thing, and they just haven't ever done that. And so you might say, well, Travis, what about the fact that more recently, within the past year or so, we've started to see some really cool cinematics, comics, and music and that kind of thing, music videos sometimes for the characters. Isn't that an example of lore? Yeah, I think that does actually. It's a decent point. It's a decent point in that all those things tell kind of stories sometimes or reveal aspects of a character that wouldn't otherwise be revealed by gameplay. And I really value those things. I think that Riot has done a great job of partnering with cinematics teams and having their fantastic music team in-house, partner with people to create great stuff and commissioning artists and that kind of thing. That stuff is fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. But I think that if you look at it, you'll realize that as fantastic as it is, all of it is ultimately marketing. This is basically what happens is a character gets announced. Let's take Echo, for instance. They showed at MSI, they debuted a sort of trailer for the character to sort of hype people up and get them excited about the character. They did a comic. The comic actually one of the more narrative and lore related things that they've done in recent times. And then, the character comes out and people purchase the character because they got excited about that kind of stuff. It doesn't really tell a story, and that's oftentimes basically it. Like that, think about Bard, right? Like by the time Echo came out, there was no more development on Bard. Think about like Mundo or Annie or Teemo, these characters that have been around for a very long time. When was the last time we heard anything about them? But Travis, what about the cinematics that they do around every season start or so? They do almost one annually or every 12 months. They have a cinematic, and I think actually if you look at those, it's literally, I actually was disappointed by the last cinematic because it's cool. Okay, it's really cool and awesome to watch, but every cinematic is just a better version of the last cinematic, which is characters running around a map, maybe two characters. A character shows up and they fight, and then one of them dies or gets chased off or something, and you switch to another scene with more characters fighting, and it's like so redundant now. And I guess it would be cool if that stuff existed alongside other things, but yeah, I mean, think about Season 1, the Season 2 trailer that was on Dominion that got leaked by like Riot Brazil a while back, consistently like a Twist of Fate, and then a New Dawn, like these all sort of follow the same format. They don't really tell story. Now, you might say, okay, but Riot has said that they're going to do this in the future. And the problem is that maybe more than anything else, Riot has consistently promised or said, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then never really fulfilling it. A pretty good example is sometime after the Journal of Justice stopped being printed, you had Riot Kate, I believe that's Christina Norman, come on and sort of say, hey, I'm running things on the creative side, or it seemed as though she was sort of representing the creative side on that kind of things, and she said, hey, we feel as though we don't have things up to date as we want them to be, or the quality bar that we want them to be, so we're going to go back and revisit bios, we're going to redo some lore and that kind of thing. Nothing ever really ended up happening meaningful there, right? You had 9 months ago, and so I recently had to look this up, 9 months ago it was, that there was a dev blog from the sort of narrative side saying like, hey, here's what we're looking to accomplish. We're splitting out sort of the concept of characters from the game, and we feel like you can, as long as they remain, consistent across the different ways that you're seeing the character, we feel like you can totally have interesting character involvement in a story outside of the game, in a cinematic, and elsewhere, right? Like, it doesn't just need to be about the game, and we're going to be doing all these things. And that was last September, which was 9 months ago. Somebody could have had a child. People have had children in that time. And the funny thing is at the end of the dev blog, Tommy Knox, this guy, says that they're planning on keeping us up to date with more dev blogs. No more dev blogs, right? It's so frustrating. Because I think that Alexander Brazi, who's known as Zelnath on the forums, designer, he said at one point in time that they have kind of like an Marvel problem, where they have all these cool characters, and I forget kind of how he described it, right? But the Marvel comparison is fairly apt in that they have a really cool cast of characters. I like that he used that in his post. They have a really cool cast of characters, but the sad thing is that in the Marvel world, there's like comics and movies and all these different things that happen, right, with these characters, and you never really see that at all. And even in some of the marketing stuff, like the Bard cinematic was cool visually, but terrible narratively. Like, you didn't learn anything about Bard, really. Like, it was such a disappointment. Echo was better, but I love Bard, and I think that the cinematic itself was cool as a standalone thing, but again, it just didn't really, narratively, it was disappointing, especially for somebody who's interested in lore. Like, if you're a lore fan and you want of games, I think Blizzard's lore is one of the best things about that company. I mean, lately it's kind of gone off the deep end, but really that's like that's like something that company can hold up and say like, hey, look at us, look what we can do. And it just hasn't really panned out on the Riot side of things. And so this is why, part of the reason why I've been wanting to do this video for a while, but part of the reason I chose to do it now is because finally we have a moment in time, and a moment where things can change. Who knows, maybe things are coming down the pipeline, but one thing that I am super, super excited about was the announcement that came out yesterday about Graham McNeil, who is an author who has recently accepted a narrative role at Riot Games. Graham McNeil is fantastic. I've literally only read one book of his because he mostly writes Warhammer stuff that I don't care about, but I read back in 2010, 5 years ago, a novel of his called I Mengsk, which was about Arcturus Mengsk, one of the characters in the StarCraft universe. And it is, to date, the best novel that I've ever read that is sort of based on a video game. And probably still one of the best character-driven, story arc narratives. It's just fantastic. That, I don't know, it just seems like he's a really good guy, really invested in characters, narrative, and that kind of thing. And I really, really hope, Riot, this is your moment. This is your moment. You've now brought this guy on board. You can totally do something with this, right? I'm really, really excited about this guy coming on board. I think he's going to be fantastic. And it was just so cool seeing that name now 5 years later attached to Riot Games, because I'm really hopeful about this. The problem is that this is not the first time that somebody major has come in to Riot as part of the creative side of things, and I got my hopes up about there being some sort of lore development around it. The first time, and this is public information now, you can go look at his LinkedIn, is Aaron Ehas, who's a really great guy. I've met him on a number of occasions, and he was actually one of the guys behind the writing of The Last Airbender. In fact, the guy who's basically responsible for all the writing ultimately on the show, not the movie. And like, you just kind of get excited because you see this big name attached to things, to Riot Games, and you think like things are going to become fantastic on the narrative side. This guy is a creative director, is his title, and it just never really panned out. So this is, please, dear Riot Games, Riot, please, to activate the meme, please start creating lore, start telling people what's going on. Like, you've consistently said, oh no, we're actually going to do it. No, we're actually going to do it. Oh, we're rebooting it. We've been like, always hear this, and now it's years and years later, and you guys have not yet done this. So this is why I'm really excited right now, but also very jaded about it, because like, I also would hate to see this guy come in and not see anything like any kind of results from that. So Riot, please empower this guy, make him able to do all the stuff that he wants to do. And I guess the rest of your narrative team, like, I don't know what they've been up to. They've said recently that they've got stuff that they're working on, which is always the kind of tagline we've heard forever. And so hopefully something comes out. But anyway, that is sort of my thoughts on the on the lore side of things, for once, not so much on the esports side. And I'm really hopeful that this Graham McNeil hire pickup is going to pan out, because I think that the same way that Riot looks at esports as being a feature that their players can enjoy, I think the narrative side of things can totally be that as well. Would love to see comics, short stories, novels, all sorts of different things start coming out of that company. So hopefully this ends up happening. Anyway, thanks for watching. You can check out the rest of our coverage of all things League of Legends at gamespot.com/LOL.